Alright, bottom left of Hecate, it is GuMiHo. On the top right, we do have States. That's right, State. The GSL commentator, yes, but some of you might know of his career prior to that. Some of you might not. It's a pretty old-fashioned name, as far as players go. But at one point, State was absolutely one of the best foreigners that non-Korea had to offer. So he actually went over to Korea, was part of a fairly early batch. People went over to Korea, maybe not the earliest, but pretty early. I was actually on a Kespa team for a while. Although it's actually escaping me which one right now. I have to look up his Wikipedia again. And then just kind of slowly started to drift away from StarCraft 2, years ago. I actually moved back to the States for a while, and then moved back to Korea, I believe, pre-COVID, so I want to say like 2018 or something like that. And has been there since then. Obviously getting a job casting GSL as well. So State definitely is a good enough player that if he actually spends time playing StarCraft 2 is going to make it to the GM League almost no problem. And that's exactly what he has done. Gotten back into the laddering and is now back into GM on Korea. Unfortunately, as cool as it is to be top 200 in a region, you are still actually nowhere close to the professional gamers. It's just how much skill there is left to gain as you head up into the higher and higher and higher and higher and higher ranks. And GuMiHo, definitely one of the staple Korean players, Korean Terrans of the scene, is in the top 8 and is looking to, maybe get to the round of 4. I think it is possible, maybe not the most likely, but certainly possible. So State's got quite the challenge in front of him, and in this matchup as well. GuMiHo, to be fair, hasn't really looked all of that... He's really not looked all that great in the matchup, I want to say. I was actually very surprised to hear the results of Group D, which I didn't actually go see live, but eventually will be casting for my YouTube. Because GuMiHo doesn't really have the most convincing of TvP, and what seems to happen, alright, and we'll see if it happens here again, but is that GuMiHo plays out a totally fine early game for 6 minutes, but then when it comes to actually getting out on the map and being as intimidating as many of the other Terrans on the field are, like a Kira, who's the best TvP'er, GuMiHo just doesn't really seem to do it. He kind of does his first push out, and it's, sometimes good, sometimes great, sometimes he wins with it, sure, but then if that doesn't really work, tends to feel kind of overly cautious and almost scared of the matchup, I would say, where it's just more defensive and less of that posturing that you might see again from Cure. When you see Cure move out, he moves out, he may or may not go for an actual push. If he sees an opportunity, he's actually willing to disengage, wait up for a secondary force to either drop or just multi-prong in general with. And then while doing that kind of multi-pronged aggression or intimidation, because maybe he doesn't actually want to pull the trigger, is building up a very strong economy and very strong army, and then eventually does pull the trigger and wins. GuMiHo, it just feels like it doesn't have that intimidation factor between the first push and the point in which they're like, on Ghost and Vikings. So, let's see if this is the same thing. If I can talk a little bit more about it. It's already different, so, probably not. We do have multiple Cyclones being created. State does not have a shield battery in the natural, and that could be problematic, to say the least. These are glass cannons. They don't have that high ground vision, so that's something that State's trying to use to his advantage. Just managed to save one of those Stalkers, but not the other one. And one Cyclone is very close to death, although, yeah, okay, finally gets it. But then that's 2 Stalkers dead. Not exactly a fair trade. But fortunately, State will have the defender's advantage kicking in. So, it does feel bad to see him so bullied by a couple of Cyclones, but that's really the shield battery missing. That is the problem there. One more Stalker gets warped in and is just one shot away from taking care of the Cyclone. There we go, finally, but now even the Marines causing a little bit of problems. I think we have 2 more Cyclones making their way across the map. Fortunately for State, he is on a, not Zelnaga Caverns. So there's the 35 seconds, or whatever it is, to actually try and defend. But, unfortunately, there just aren't that many units. State's working off of a 2-gateway opener, now adding on 2 more gateways, but under all this pressure and all the reinforcements that he's had to make, 6 Stalkers lost, 8 in total so far built. Finally has this War Prism. It just really doesn't have the smoothest shot time here. GuMiHo certainly trading out enough for what he's built. But do keep in mind that GuMiHo does not have a lot of army left over after that. Is quite slow to producing, honestly. Still stuck on a very tech-heavy, 1-1-1 setup. That's not a lot of production. That's a lot of high-quality units, or a few high-quality units, I should say, potentially. But 3 Cyclones, as they are now on the defense, aren't necessarily the end-all, be-all defense of someone who ends up 4-gating you. Now, I say 4-gate as if it's, if it's the build. It's not really. State just eventually got to 4 gateways, but is clearly trying to make do with the hand that he was dealt. So, third Nexus is on the way. Robotics Bay as well. Shield batteries aplenty coming down, actually. But State, unfortunately, without like a proper 4 gate, is not going to be able to get to the 8 and then 12 and then 16 stalkers before a couple of tanks are out. Because if you got 16 stalkers when the second tank was still building, there's a chance. But yeah, that's just clearly not what he was dedicating to. So, very unlikely win here for our poor Protoss. GuMiHo does have a ways to wait for Stim. Combat shields, 1-1 to finish, all that good stuff. So, a big gap of time for State to try and utilize. Observer is getting some decent scouting. Obviously, the Stalker scouted that it was a Banshee follow-up too. So, you've kind of nipped that in the bud just by scouting it. So, that's some good news. But GuMiHo overall, macro-wise, should be favored. Even workers, which favors the Terran drastically. Scan and the natural reveals a Disruptor, and that might reveal more Disruptor play, but this is actually kind of cute. State went Disruptor first for what looks to be a bit of a drop, but then is actually going into Colossus. And I imagine actually into Colossus, I could send Thermal Lance to be on the way. Hey! I'm going to check that in a second. I do have the alt-tab, but we got the Banshees, which I thought were going to be handled pretty freaking quickly. Actually killing 7 probes. Okay. Oof. Taking away that one-shot potential at the very least. More Stalkers being warped in the main. Recall happening as well. Hopefully the Observer is going to be with that, or at least one of these Observers is going to be around here. Where the hell is the Observer? Okay, it did go with Army, all right. Nonetheless, kind of a bummer. Disruptor is being paid attention to. Combat Shields was a little bit late, so that's something for State to work against, I guess. Oh, but then the Warp Prism gets to the lock-on range. No. I do love the attempts, but now we're down to just the basic Protoss army. I think State was trying to copy something that... Was it Hero who did it? Because I was kind of only half listening while on the train. But I think there was a game where a Protoss did go for the Warp Prism speed, and I want to say it was Hero. Because I can't imagine who else it would have been. And then went for some Disruptor harassment. If I recall correctly, State was kind of praising it, but doesn't really work out in this game, does it? And now the Colossus don't have extended Thermal Lance to help out. The Disruptor is obviously gone. Warp Prism as well, so no juggling of the Colossus. Charge, is it done? It is done. So Charge Lots are going to try and take care of things. We actually have them being taken care of the army on the right side. GuMiHo trying to catch his opponent off guard just by having units over here, and then rallying his medevacs. It's actually a bit haphazard, to be honest, from GuMiHo. The 2 Colossus doing an okay job breaking the front lines, really, too. And the medevacs, again, just flying every which way. GuMiHo really... I mean, well, hey, this is making me feel better about my critique of him earlier on. This is kind of what I'm talking about, you know? Like, the first attack is supposed to look really good because he was in this advantageous position, so that's fine. But then the actual handling of the attacks, the pushing and pulling, and I mean, literally right there, that was just the micro. That was just all over the place. Reveals GuMiHo's weakness in this matchup, in my opinion. As much as I want to also praise State, I just really think it's GuMiHo's problem. I don't find that I'm particularly confident in GuMiHo's TvP, where I'm basically confident in almost everyone else's as far as Korean Terrans go. Even Ryung, who's kind of like a semi-pro, right? Like, I feel like his TvP is actually better. Kira's is the best in the world. Maro's obviously very good. Bunny's very dangerous, so on and so forth. Warp Prism in the main base. Does take a lot of damage, and we'll go down to this Viking. Hardly a distraction, hardly an SCV is going down either. That was supposed to kind of pair up maybe a little bit better with this forward push. Scaring GuMiHo. GuMiHo is a fairly tank-heavy Terran, but that's not necessarily surprising considering his notoriety for mech. Not that he mech straight up in this matchup, but he likes tanks. And they are great when it comes to holding the zone against, say, more Stalker Colossus composition. They're fantastic. They do get weaker as more charge lots get involved, and especially if they get surrounded, concaved on, but it's something that GuMiHo will most likely avoid. Despite States getting a bit of a freebie in the previous battle, is still overall on the back foot. Is overall so kind of supposed to lose this. Down in upgrades, still not even on a third Colossus, still no extended Thermal Lance. Yeah, this is now just an issue of A moving for GuMiHo, honestly. 3 tanks in range of the whole army, and State will have to tap out. GG, GuMiHo takes game number 1. Not exactly surprising, but like I said, GuMiHo, it's not the matchup that I'm most convinced with him about, even though he did just recently win, thanks to it, the GSL group. But whatever. Don't worry about that one. But thank you very much whoever donated. Oh my goodness, Mr. Chaz with 50 bucks. My favorite broadcaster, my favorite sport, and my favorite Terran. In this economy? $50 donation in this economy? Thank you so much, Mr. Chaz. I was thinking of buying a bottle of soju, and I was like, I already had so much food today. I had some, I had a bento box for lunch, which is a lot of calories. And then I had, yukgaejong. I finally got my anxiety low enough to confidently stride into this local restaurant. You know, like, first I have to, like, scope it out to see if, like, single people are eating there. Because there's barbecue restaurants, specifically, are, like, prone to denying single visitors, which kind of sucks. But anyways, this was a yukgaejong, which is, like, a soup. It's like a beef soup. But you still have to check, you know, I still have to be kind of, you know, careful. And then whether or not it's going to be, like, a complicated process, like, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions that you can't answer because you can't speak fluent Korean. But I finally got my anxiety level down enough that I just confidently strode in, put up one finger, and then sat down, and it was super easy. It was super good as well. Not as spicy as I was expecting. It's like a spicy beef soup, and I actually added a couple of jalapenos to impress the Koreans I was next to. Just kidding. No, I was experimenting. They had like salt and pepper mix, and they had like straight gochujang, and then they had the peppers, and then they had like tiny shrimp. It's like a very salty taste. And I was experimenting with all of them. Anyway, before I make myself hungry again, top left of Golden Hour State, bottom right GuMiHo, and GuMiHo is proxying. So, this is going to actually get up and running. Unfortunately, State not going for a probe scout. Yeah, just straight up not going for one. Because even if he had gone for a post-7X core scout, he still might have been able to see this. I'm guessing not, though. Yeah, well... Huh? Actually, does it? How does it go? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's not scouting. Now he is. Okay. Oh, no, come on. Well, it'd only be an extra second notice anyway. And at least this was 7X core, then Nexus. So a little bit better. The probe's going to see the bunker and kind of put 2 and 2 together pretty quickly. I mean, this could be a fake, but, you know, very likely that it's not. And this is where you would really want to Zealot. The Zealot doesn't really help a lot versus the Reaper. It can get the Reaper to miss some shots and have some awkward micro. We know that, but it's not really the best. Probe micro against the Reaper, like microing them away from it and then boosting the Stalker, the Adept, is where you're going to usually find the defense of the Reaper. The Zealot, though, can take care of the bunker that's building, and that's what you really want. And unfortunately, you know, State didn't know this was happening, didn't get a Zealot. It's going to be a little problematic. Already losing 4 probes to the Reaper is already a tremendous victory for the Terran. Like, 2 is pretty good. And 3, if you're talking about, you know, Hero. You're kind of like, Hero, what's wrong? What are you doing? But now this is even more problematic because the bunker is in range of the pylon that helps the shield battery. The shield battery is necessary to killing the bunker, and GuMiHo realized there was going to be an opportunity here, so he built Marines, which build faster than Reapers, obviously in proxied as well, so there's going to be a full bunker, which is even tough for a shield battery 3 Stalker hit squad to take care of. That's a decent amount of DPS with the extra range boosted from the bunker. And the SCV is plural now, going for the repair, cyclone follow-up. I think State's actually just dead. And this is generally, I would say, where it snowballs. When this bunker actually gets up and running, then it's really worrisome, but obviously the pylon being in range is the real kick in the nuts. That's when the Protoss, you know, slaps their forehead and is like, ah, come on. The SCV is actually repairing the Cyclone, not the bunker, like they maybe should. States managing to get a single SCV killed. And now with 4 Stalkers, might actually be able to just burn down this bunker. So maybe not game over quite yet, but still not a fantastic position for the Protoss. This is a big delay on technology, for instance. And in fact, State just added on a second gateway, still has yet to add on technology, is starting to bank quite a bit. Managing to keep his macro somewhat in line, which I really gotta applaud. This would absolutely be a game where one thing leads to another, and not only is your opponent getting away with a bunch of aggression, but then you also start messing up the macro, and you just hate yourself. So State's doing that, but State has a significant delay on his production, on his technology. Now, this could also be on purpose. We do know that MaxPax, for instance, likes going 3 Gateway into Twilight Council, which is seemingly what State has decided to do, either as a reaction or as the game plan, but then everything was messed up. So, like, the macro doesn't look spectacular. It looks a little lopsided, but kind of just trying to do what you can under all this pressure. GuMiHo with the 3 Cyclones, make that 5 in total. Will not be attacked anytime soon. State has technically more Stalkers, but you don't really want to combat the potential of an equal number of Cyclones out on the map without your own Blink. I mean, if you had Blink, you'd be a little more confident, but Blink's only just started. GuMiHo getting an interference matrix upgrade for his Raven, going into bio, no problem. I was curious if he was going to experiment with the mech a little bit, because he did when the patch was very first released. He experimented with it versus Hero in a game 5. It failed. But I thought maybe he'd try against State. I'm sure GuMiHo's pretty confident against him. Robotics Bay once again for States. No surprises to go into really the bread and butter once again for Protoss. Blink plus Colossus, 3 base defense into a decent macro game is the hope for a lot of Protosses. Nightmare changes it up, but it didn't work out for him and his GSL group. And then Hero occasionally changes it up, but this is pretty much the most standard thing for a reason, because it's also the most dependable. It's all dependable. It's not really any surprises, though, as far as catching your opponent off guard, so that's pretty much the only downside. The most that you can catch your opponent off guard with this is if they do attack into you, defend, and then they don't have an answer to Colossus, like a Viking or tanks even. And so they pull back entirely, and we see MaxPax really abuse that particular power spike. But that kind of has to happen with a game that's like already going all right. Which I'm not, you know, I don't think it is for State. Even though he did not end up dying to the Cyclone follow-up, thank goodness, it still was not a very pretty start for our boy State here, America. Although seriously, for the last like decade, State's definitely lived in Korea more often than America. And he was very young when he first moved to Korea as well. I forget how old he was, but he's younger than me by like 5 years, something like that. 4 years? I don't think he spent more time in his whole life in Korea, but like it'll eventually get there because he does plan on staying there. So eventually. But anyway, for right now, he represents America. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. The other American, Estrella, is in Korea as well, actually. Oh, nice snipe on the Raven. Good start for State, who also gets a couple of force fields, locks those Cyclones out of retreat. The Cyclones aren't really the biggest problem, as we also had some Liberator harassment in the main. Ooh, 8 probes went down. But still, nice to get rid of that. Another couple of force fields coming down, but I'm afraid the army of the Protoss just isn't strong enough to actually handle this. A couple of more Zealots on the front lines would do wonders here. The Immortal is still up and running. Should be focus firing some of these Marauders. Did not get a chance to focus fire the tank, however. And unfortunately, good old bio under Medivacs does out DPS the army that we saw. Seriously, a couple of Zealots on the front lines, especially if they get on top of the tank. The Colossus is a little bit faster, and State has a serious chance of straight up winning that fight. It's GuMiHo who maybe oversteps, but in that particular instance, it's a State that overstepped. But anyways, I was gonna say, Estrella actually is asleep right now. I just messaged him. And, oh, no, cancel! Yeah! Yeah, him in the house have actually been sick with COVID the last couple of weeks, so his sleep schedule's all over the place. 3 more probes went down, I guess to another one of mine maybe, but this one did not grab too much. Really, State improves a couple of things, especially considering the way that this game opened was supremely awkward for him. And there's a lot of chances. Now, that is also, I think, GuMiHo is still somewhat experimenting. GuMiHo might not be experimenting with straight-up mech, which, again, probably doesn't work. But he is experimenting with these 4 and 6 Cyclone openers, which I don't think they're actually that good. I really thought they were a good idea as far as the follow-up to the bunker. I thought, you know, that just made sense. But, you know, in general, I'm not sure that map control is actually as valid as valuable as it seems. Anyway. 1-1 done for the Protoss. Just shy of it for GuMiHo. One of the better chances for State to take a fight, but the Colossus might not have enough DPS here. Lots of Marauders left over. 2 Medivacs make that 1, but the Stalkers, hardly a wall. More like tissue paper. Trying to protect their Colossus doesn't work out very well, and this is still going to be game. Yes, indeed. GG. GuMiHo with a 2-0 moves on to face either Cyan or Firefly. So one of the Chinese Protosses is going to try their luck against GuMiHo.